Over the past year, the EV revolution has only accelerated faster and faster. Yet, behind the popularity of EV stocks, there has been a hidden transition occurring. Cathie Wood, the CEO and CIO of ARK Invest, has stated that she believes that an EV stock market crash is practically guaranteed over the next 10 years. Now, that doesn't mean that you should sell Tesla and all other EV stocks you may own. In fact, the research that Cathie Wood has done supports the transition to EVs and EV stocks, but points directly to favoring a few EV companies. In this video, I will cover what Cathie Wood is predicting for the EV sector and why she believes that an EV stock crash is warranted. In order to understand what is about to happen over the next few years, Cathie Wood believes we need to backtrack and look at what happened in US history when the automobile revolution first started. In 1893, two bicycle mechanics invented the first successful American gasoline automobile. 2 years later, the two mechanics won the first American car race. 1 year after that, they went on to make the first sale of an American-made gasoline car. It's not a surprise that after such disruptive technology was unveiled, many automakers flooded in to replicate and manufacture automobiles. By 1899, 30 American manufacturers produced 2,500 motor vehicles. Over the next 10 years, around 485 companies entered the automobile industry. This is similar to the EV revolution, as you've seen a huge surge in the number of EV automakers. Yet, the automobile industry wasn't disrupted until the Elon Musk of gasoline vehicles disrupted the industry. This is, as many of you know, Henry Ford. In 1908, Henry Ford introduced the Model T. The reason why the Model T was so revolutionary was because of the fact that it was somewhat affordable to the population. To put the vehicle into context, this vehicle is similar to the release of the Tesla Model 3. By no means was the Model 3 affordable, but at the same time, it showed the automobile industry that electric vehicles have a bright future ahead. In the same year that the Model T was created, William Durant, who was a high school dropout that made his fortune building horse carriages, started General Motors. Due to its vast land area and scattered settlements, the US had massive demand for automobiles. Due to this demand, the new automobile firms operated in the luxury automobile market quite well. By 1913, the US produced 485,000 vehicles, which was a huge increase from a decade before that. During this time, one company stood out of the crowd, which was Ford Motors. Ford outcompeted its competitors through its impressive design and moderate price. The Ford Model N, revealed in 1906, was dubbed as the first motor car that was actually manufactured at scale. Following the Model N was, as I described earlier, the Model T, which was especially impressive with its innovative design and moderate price. This was all because of the fact that Henry Ford was able to disrupt modern mass production techniques at its plant in Michigan. By 1929, the automobile industry changed dramatically. In 1908, there were 253 active automobile manufacturers. By 1929, there were only 44 automobile manufacturers. Not only that, but 80% of the automobiles manufactured were from 3 companies. You might be wondering, why did this happen? Ultimately, it all came down to innovation. The car market became extremely saturated as used cars piled up dealers' lots, leading to only a few innovative automakers taking the majority of the market share. For example, under the leadership of Alfred Sloan Jr., General Motors innovated the idea of planned obsolescence. Alfred Sloan Jr. put an emphasis on the styling of the vehicle and also ensured a large cosmetic annual model change. This made it so that people became dissatisfied with their cars as new annual models were created. Because of that dissatisfaction, people kept buying GM's new vehicles every year. By 1936, GM had 43% of the US market. Following GM was Chrysler at 25% and Ford at 22%. This meant that by 1936, 90% of the automobile sales were all from 3 automakers. As I mentioned earlier, in the early 1900s, there were 485 automobile manufacturers in the industry. Out of all of those companies, only 3 dominated. Cathie Wood sees the same occurrence happening to the EV industry. In Cathie Wood's weekly ARK Invest newsletter, she and other ARK analysts detailed how history repeats itself. The question she asked was, could most electric vehicle startups go bankrupt? Outside of China, the number of EV companies going public is mounting, and, if automotive history is any guide, we believe most will disappear in one way or another. As gas-powered vehicles commercialized in the early 1900s, for example, roughly 485 companies entered the business. By 1930, fewer than 50 survived, and just 3 accounted for 80% of auto output. Likewise in China, more than 500 EV companies had registered by 2019, but only a handful were able to raise additional funds last year to produce one vehicle or to scale manufacturing. Now it appears EV startups are proliferating outside of China. Again, if history is any guide, most of them will fail to reach scale. What Cathie Wood just said there is a clear warning to the EV stock industry. There are now many EV companies out there, but only a few will actually dominate the industry in the future. Many of the EV companies popping out of nowhere will die off by going bankrupt. Today, there are many EV stocks out there. Competing in the industry in no particular order are Tesla, XPeng Motors, Li Auto, Workhorse, General Motors, Fisker, Electramechanica, Lordstown Motors, Candy, Fiat Chrysler, Arcimoto, BYD, Nikola Scam, Canoo, Volkswagen, Green Power Motor, Daimler, NIO, Apple, BMW, Ford, Toyota, Baidu, Lucid Motors, and Geely. Out of all the companies I mentioned, only a few will actually succeed, and I'm sure there are many companies that aren't even inside the list. With that being said, if you're going to invest in the EV sector, you must choose wisely about which companies will succeed. Personally, I see Tesla as practically a guarantee in terms of dominating the EV market.
2018, Tesla had a 17% share of the global EV market, including China. Last year, I think I've got this number right, they had 23% share. We assumed for our bear case that Tesla would lose market share from that 17% and go down to, in our base case, 11%, and in our bear case, 6%. Instead, what has happened, it went up to 23% last year, and now I think we're up to, this is rough, as of mid-year, about 26%. So it's still increasing, has 79 to 80% share in the United States. And even in China, where I think there are 150 electric vehicle manufacturers, crazy. Tesla had in June 21% of that market. Think about that, 150, and Tesla is 21%. Now,
it's incredible, yeah.
It is incredible.
Assuming that only a few are to succeed, this doesn't leave many other spots available. In fact, it is possible that history is different and only 1 or 2 companies come out on top. Let me know which companies you think will dominate the EV sector over the next decade or 2. Do you think the automobile market will ultimately come down to a few winners? Or do you think that many automakers will take a large portion of the pie? If you enjoyed this video, please consider supporting the channel on Patreon if you're interested in seeing my full portfolio, in addition to buy and sell alerts. And please hit the like button and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.